All right, on the next ones in this case, guys, we're actually going to go ahead and focus on rate of change. Now, rate of change in this case, guys, actually talks about slope between specific intervals. Most of the time, these equations aren't linear, which means they're not going to be a straight line. It's actually going to be different types of functions. So rate of change represents the change of y over the change in x, which in this case translates to the formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And what this means in this case is that they're actually providing us with both values of x. The intervals actually represent the x1 and the x2, or we could actually, change that around. It really doesn't matter which one's which. But in order for us to actually determine or to use this formula to determine the rate of change, we need to identify y. So our first step in this case is to identify our y values. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and actually do the work here. Identify y values. And in order for us to actually identify those y values, we have to substitute once again the values for x, both x's. So I'm going to go ahead and start off in this case with x1, which in this case equals a -2. So then this becomes, we're going to use the equation of f. So f of -2 equals a -2 squared plus 10. -2 squared in this case is a 4. 4 plus 10 is 14. So then in this case, y1 is 14. So we have the first points. All right, let's go ahead and focus on the next one in this case. X2 in this case is a -1. So then that's going to be f of -1 equals a -1 squared plus a 10. So then -1 squared is 1. 1 plus 10 is 11. So then y2 in this case is 11. So we have our 2 points in this case, so let's go ahead and actually use them on this side. So then that's going to be an 11 minus a 14 over a -1 minus a -2. Notice we have double negatives there because this one's a negative, and the problem does call for us to subtract. Top in this case is going to become a -3, and the bottom, change that to a plus plus because it's negative times negative is a positive, and that becomes a 1. So then in this case, the change of y over the change in x is equal to a -3. And that's actually the rate of change. The rate of change. Right. Now, on this next one, in this case, guys, it's actually asking you what type of rate of change does each of the intervals have, whether it's going to be a positive, ignore that one, positive, a negative, or a 0, right? And it's actually the same equation in this case, same equation here. So we want to go ahead and determine what type of interval or rate of change it has. Now, whenever we're talking about positive, negative, or 0, we're actually talking about the slope. So whenever we determine a positive slope, it's actually increasing from left to right. Negative is actually decreasing from left to right, and 0 is actually just a horizontal line. So easiest way for us to do this is to actually graph it. If not, we could actually do the work, which means show all of this work here for each of these, right? There's 4 of them. Or we could graph it. And in this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and go on the route of graphing this. So I'm actually going to take out the Desmos calculator here. Now I'm going to go ahead and graph our equation. We're going to go ahead and type in an x squared plus a 10, right? Now, in this case, let's go ahead and focus on those intervals. Now, once again, guys, these intervals represent x values. So I'm actually going to go ahead and input, I'm wondering if I put it in interval notation, parentheses. No. Let's just make x equals a -4. And we're also going to say, oh, wait. We'll actually type it here, -4 and -1. All right, let's ignore that. Let's do it again. X equals -4, and on the bottom, x equals -1. And if you take a look in this case at the graph, it's actually going to point out the points for you. It goes 1 here and 1 there. So those are actually our points here, these 2 points. This one and that one there. those 2 points. Now, if you take a look in this case at the direction this graph is going, the direction this graph here is going, I'm going to take a screenshot. In this case, this graph is actually going down. It's going from this point, let's do a different color. It's going from this point to that one, and it's going down. So in this case, the slope for this one is negative. And if we were to use the formula of the y2 minus y1, we would have ended up with a negative result. I don't know the exact value of it, but I know that it would be negative. All right, so that's for the first interval. All right, now let's go ahead and check out the next one. So this one is negative. Now on the next one, let's go ahead and see here. We're looking for when x is a negative 3 and a positive 3. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Did it not take it? Oh, they're both negative. Sorry about that. And a positive 3. There you go. So on this one here, we have a point there and a point there. All right, we have those 2 points. If I were to take a screenshot of this once again and I try to connect these points, try to connect them here. Okay, this is actually going from here to there. And notice in this case, that is a straight line. The slope on this one would actually be 0. So if you were to solve for this by hand, we should actually be getting a 0 as our answer. Okay, so this one is 0. From there, go ahead and do the same thing for the other ones. Go ahead and graph it, and then you'll be able to identify those points there. Identify what direction it's moving.